Hey guys, I'm Brian. Welcome back to Next Level Gardening and a brand new gardening year. Let me know in the comments where you're from and how many years you've been gardening, and let me know if it's your first year gardening. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how I get the season going, starting with seeds. Now, I know it's a little too early to be starting seeds in some places, and you really have to have patience. I know it's tough to wait, but you really need to wait for the right time, and I'm going to let you know when that is in just a bit. So the first thing I suggest you do is go through the seeds you already have. I've got all mine organized. Don't let me fool you, these were organized a week ago. Before that, they were scattered all around everywhere. But these little totes are the best seed storage solution that I have found. I even have them all labeled and alphabetized, and that'll last for about a week. But for now, it's very organized. I know what I have and I know what I need. What you're going to find on every seed pack is a date stamped somewhere on there. And that is not an expiration date. That is the date, the year that these seeds were packed for. So if you buy them now, they're probably going to say they're packed for 2025. And that has nothing to do with how long these seeds will last. Seeds will last for a really long time, for years, if you keep them in a cool, dry place. Now, maybe after 4 or 5 years, you'll start to get a little bit of degradation in the germination rate. So you might just have to sow a few extra just to make sure you make up the difference. The only deviation to that rule are pelleted seeds, and this is sometimes what they do to very, very, very tiny seeds. They will coat them in a few layers of a clay substance. They look like these tiny little balls. Those really start to degrade after the very first year. So you really just have a year or two to use those. Now, the second thing you're going to want to do is, and hopefully you watched my video about this in the fall, when I was standing right here, and I told you to either keep a journal or make a video of your garden at that time. And what you want to know is, how did last summer go? Did you have too much of one thing? Did you have not enough of something else? Did you want to plant earlier, plant later? All of those things are great to know right now, because now is the time to use that information in planning this year's garden. And the reason you want to do this in the fall is because your memory of what summer was like was much better in the fall than it is now, if you're anything like me. So now that you know what seeds you have already and how your plans might change from last year, that's going to let you make a list of seeds you need to order this year. And I've got a bunch of seed catalogs. I love when these things show up in the mail. And if you've ever ordered from a seed company, you're going to automatically be on their mailing list. Or you can go online to seed companies and have them send you catalogs. Once you're on their mailing list, you're on their mailing list forever. And I'm okay with that. Now, I'm always asked where I order my seeds from, and I don't have one set company. I'm not sponsored by a company. I don't own any companies, so I will leave a link down below to the ones that I order from fairly regularly. Now, nobody beats Baker Creek when it comes to heirloom fruits, vegetables, and flowers, and the sheer volume of the varieties of all the different kinds of things you want to grow. I like Johnny's, I like Burpees, Select Seeds. There is a small company that I've been getting seeds from for the past few years. Mostly, in the beginning, it was all different kinds of, pumpkins, different shapes, colors, sizes. But they're actually expanding recently into a whole range of unique choices. And if you like supporting small businesses, definitely give Blue Pumpkin Seed Company a try. And again, I'll put links to all these down in the description. Now, there are 3 categories of seeds, and I get questions on them every year, so it's worth repeating every year. So the 3 categories are GMO, hybrids, and open pollinated / heirlooms. And then you've got a subset, which is organic versus non-organic. In my opinion, when you're buying seeds, I don't really differentiate between the two. If there is a variety I really want, but it's not organic, I will still buy it. I will grow it organically, but I'm not really concerned that it was grown organically and the seeds came from an organic plant. I don't think there's much of a difference there. Now, I always buy organic where I can because I think it's important to support organic farmers. Now, as far as GMO seeds, my advice has changed on that. All the way through last year, when I did a video like this, I said you don't have to worry about it because there's no way that a home gardener is going to ever get their hands on GMO seeds, because GMO seeds, number one, are really expensive, and number two, they're not allowed to be grown outside of commercial settings. And so the GMO companies keep a really tight hold on that. Well, about 3 weeks after that video last year, a brand new GMO seed came out for home gardeners. It was a purple tomato. It took the gardening world by storm. It was very controversial. I did a video on it. I'll link that down below. So I can't really say that anymore. However, for the most part, you're not just going to accidentally get a GMO seed packet. 99.9% of them are still tightly controlled, still super expensive. And if in the case of this purple tomato, there was a press release, it was advertised, you knew you were getting a GMO tomato. That was like the selling point, even though to me that wasn't a selling point, that was just an avoid point. That being said, most seed packets nowadays, and even before this happened, they said non-GMO on them because a lot of people were still under the impression that they could still accidentally get a GMO seed. But even if the seed packet doesn't say non-GMO, it's probably not GMO. Now, the next category of seeds you can buy are hybrids, and hybrids are completely different than GMO. I know when you hear the word hybrid, people think that something unnatural was done to that seed to get it to be what it is. Hybrids are nothing more than the cross-pollination of two different plants. Now, that is very tightly controlled. They keep records on what the parents are, what the offspring is, and they can choose those hybrids to create plants that are, easier to grow in certain areas. Maybe they're more disease resistant. And so those are good things, and there's nothing unnatural about that. Bees do it in the garden every day. It's just a little more controlled and methodical when humans do it. Now, the only thing about a hybrid seed, while they sometimes are easier to grow, sometimes they'll produce more, be more disease resistant, like I said, if you're looking to save your seeds, you can save seeds from a hybrid tomato, but they aren't necessarily going to be the same thing when you grow it the next year. So, like one of my favorite tomatoes is Sun Gold. It's a gold cherry tomato, super sweet. It's an F1 hybrid. So that means if I save the seed and plant it again, the next year I'm going to get a tomato that has the value of one or both of the two parent plants, but I'm not going to get a Sun Gold tomato. It might be a little bit similar, but it's not going to be that tomato. So you can save it and you will get fruit from it, most likely. Maybe not as much. It's not going to be what you thought it was going to be. On the other hand, the next category of seeds being open pollinated, that means you can grow them in your garden and open pollinated. They can be pollinated by the bees, wind, whatever. And when you save those seeds, they're going to come true the following year. They may not be 100% genetically the same, but close enough where you're probably not going to be able to tell the difference. And then the heirloom label is attached to open pollinated seeds that are 50 to 100 years or more old. Usually heirloom seeds have a story attached to them in some way. My favorite heirloom tomato is another gold one. It happens to be Kellogg's Breakfast. I've turned a lot of you guys onto it. I know it's just such a good tomato. I'm not a red tomato fan for the most part, and so I go after the great yellowy orange ones. And I can save the seeds from the tomato the previous year, grow them the next year, and I'm going to get Kellogg's Breakfast tomatoes. Now, that being said, figure out what you need and get your orders in quickly because these seed companies do sell out. Gardening has become very popular over the past few years, and seed companies start to sell out of more popular items. Now, another way you could go is just simply go to the garden center and purchase transplants. There's nothing wrong with that. I do it myself from time to time to fill in, but there's a couple of things that kind of limit what you can do in that way. Number one, when you go to the garden center, you might get 2, maybe 3 varieties of one type of vegetable. And if you're okay with that, that's great. I myself like to experiment. I like to find unique varieties and try to grow them. So if you're stuck with 1 or 2 things, you don't get to really spread your wings gardening wise. Also, they're really expensive. Everyone's complaining about the price of everything, and transplants are no different. Now, there's some transplants that might be worth it if it's a plant like beans that are going to produce a ton of beans. Then a transplant or two, it's not as financially ridiculous as, say, lettuce transplants, where you're going to spend $6 on a 6-pack of lettuce. So that's $1 a plant, so $1 a head of lettuce. By the time you water it, it probably would have been cheaper to go and buy the head of lettuce at the grocery store. Now, lettuce at home might taste better, might have some more nutrients in it, but lettuce is one of the easiest things you can grow from seed. So just do that and fill in with transplants where needed. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, but when can we start our seeds? And that answer is different for everybody, but I'm going to tell you how you can figure it out for yourself. Google your zip code and or city/town and last frost date. And Google's going to give you, it might take you to a page like the Farmer's Almanac, but you're going to get to a page that's going to show you what your last frost date is. Now, this is an average last frost date for your area. And that is the date where you know it's relatively safe to put out transplants or start your seeds. Now, that date tells you when, on average, it's safe to put things out into the garden. And so if you're starting from transplants, that's the date you want to follow. If you're starting from seed, then you can start those seeds indoors about 4 weeks before your last frost date. That way, when your last frost date gets there, either your seedlings are ready to go out or they're almost ready, and you're going to get a big jump start on things rather than waiting for that frost date and then starting them outdoors. And yes, before that last frost date, you're going to have to start your seeds indoors, but it doesn't have to be crazy complicated. And you can do it in any available area. We do ours in the garage. Right here is our old kitchen table, and it's covered right now with a bunch of gardening supplies. And Emily's going to kill me for showing you our garage right now, but we're going to clear this off, and this becomes our seed starting station. Now, there's a few other items other than an old kitchen table in the garage. There's a few other items that I recommend when you're getting started with starting seeds indoors. Number one are heat mats. These actually raise the ambient temperature under your seeds. The best temperature to go for is about 73 to 75 degrees. I recommend getting a heat mat with a thermometer and a thermostat on it so you can keep at that temperature all the time. And they're relatively inexpensive. I've had some of my heat mats for about 18 years. I know that because we had them a couple years before Noah was born. They're still working. Heat mats are going to quicken germination. I can get tomatoes, believe it or not, from the day I put the seed in the potting mix to germination, I've gotten them up in 2 to 3 days with a heat mat. With some things like peppers that love heat before they can get going, especially at this time of year, a heat mat is almost a necessity. Another thing you need is an old oscillating fan. I don't know how old this is. It came with our last house. What this does is a few things. I just sit mine on our seed table and have it oscillating, and it just keeps the top of the potting mix dry. And that is going to protect you against damping off. Damping off is a fungal disease. If you've ever seen your seedlings, the stem where it meets the soil, kind of look like someone pinched it real hard and it just kind of flopped over, that's damping off. Keeping the top of the potting mix dry is going to help prevent that. It's also going to help prevent fungus gnats. And if you've ever had fungus gnats, you know you don't want them. And keeping the top of the soil dry is a way to help prevent fungus gnats as well. Now, just the motion, once your seedlings are up 2 to 3 inches tall, just the motion of the breeze from the fan as it sways those stems back and forth, what that's doing is it's giving them a workout. And as they bend and twist in that breeze, the stems are getting stronger and more robust, so that when they go outside and they're not in this sheltered environment anymore, and some breeze comes up or some wind comes up, they're not going to just flop over. Then you need something to grow in. You can use recycled plastic cups, recycled or reused old 6-packs from the garden center, takeout containers, anything that will hold soil and has drainage in the bottom is a great thing to use. Now, as far as the medium to fill those containers with, or any of the containers you want to use, a basic seed starting mix, I can put a link to the one I use down below. You want a seed starting mix or an indoor potting mix. Both of those have been sterilized meaning you're not going to run the risk of disease that has the spores that have been tucked away in that potting mix to then reawaken once they get some warmth and some water. Same with fungus gnat eggs that might have been laid in the potting mix before you got it. That sterilization process is going to kill those so they don't reawaken once you start trying to grow your seedlings. The last thing you need is sunlight. Seeds aren't going to, well, they'll germinate without sunlight, but as soon as they germinate, they need sun to start getting their energy, getting their nutrients, and growing strongly. So if you have a south-facing window, north-facing if you're in the southern hemisphere, but a south-facing window for the rest of us that gets 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight, meaning if you were to sit in that window for a little bit, you're going to get hot. Not just a bright window, but direct sunlight for 6 to 8 hours. I don't have that. We have some big windows in the living room, but they are kind of northwest facing. That is bright, but it is not sunny. So if you've got that, more power to you. Put them in that window. If you do not, you're going to need a grow light. Now, this is where people freak out, but you don't have to freak out. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be expensive. In fact, I've got a video right here. Just click on that. I'm going to take you through some different options for different budgets for a grow light. And there's one for every budget, I'm telling you. Now, you know what you need. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to start our seeds together. You'll be ready. I'll see you next time.